We believe that being a defender requires more than building shooting skills on a range. It's also a development of the heart, mind, body, and spirit. Join us as we explore what it truly means to be a defender in your training and in your everyday life. Welcome to Defenders Live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Defenders Live. I'm your host, Laura Thorson. Tonight, we're going to be learning about something that you may not be training for, but should consider if you are a defender of life, and that is medical training. The likelihood of needing and using medical training is far higher than having to use your firearm in self-defense. And medical training is similar to gun training in that you might not need it, but you're really going to wish you had it if the need arises. So I thought it would be good to explore this topic tonight with someone who's had a lot of firsthand experience in this field and who also understands our mission at Defenders USA very well. And so I'll be bringing Jonathan Heslep on soon to talk about mindset, preparation, equipment, and many other things regarding medical training. And I do have a tidbit of the week, so I want to share that with you as well. So stay tuned for that in just a little bit. But first, I want to say if you're new or watching this as a replay, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. Please drop in the comments where you're watching from. We always want to hear from you. This episode is brought to you by Mountain Man Medical. And Mountain Man Medical has teamed up with Defenders USA to bring you the Defenders USA Trauma Kit. In this kit, you will find items that have been handpicked by the founder of Defenders USA, Adam Winch, specifically from his experience. Adam says, quote, "The likelihood of desperately needing and using such important medical gear and life-preserving training is far higher than ever having to use a gun in defense. And we at Defenders USA are here to help you be correctly equipped with the most necessary items to help sustain life in case unexpected medical trauma happens." So you can pick up your Defenders USA Trauma Kit or learn more about it by clicking in the link in the description. Okay, I'm going to move on to my tidbit of the week. I feel like my mic is like, can everybody hear me okay? I'm feeling like it's like not turned up or something. Hopefully you guys can hear me. So the tidbit of the week doesn't really have a title. It's really kind of what I learned about this weekend in competition, and there were some takeaways I wanted to share with all of you. So, Adam, can you hear me? Okay. All right, just making sure. So last weekend, I competed in my first official USPSA match. I had done a few informal competitions in the past, but this was the first sanctioned match that I'd ever been a part of. And I just have a few takeaways, I guess. Some are reminders, some are lessons that I'd like to share with you based on my experience. And one is practical, one is, I guess, a personal tip. And one is a word of encouragement that I want to share with you. So first, on a practical level, guys, I cannot tell you how important the value of video is. If you're looking to improve yourself in any task, really, the most honest look at what you're actually doing, not what you think you're doing, but what you're actually doing, is through video. So as emotional creatures, we sometimes think we know what we did based on what it felt like to us, but we know that we really don't have a good concept of speed or time, especially when it comes to shooting. So the video will show you how fast or slow you actually are, so you can help align yourself to the reality of what you're actually doing. And, you know, on a couple of the stages, I swore I was going really fast. I, felt like I really went Ricky Bobby on a couple of them. And the truth was, no, it was just an illusion in my head. So I encourage you to video yourself constantly so you can get an accurate representation of what you're doing so that you can improve. Otherwise, you're just going to keep continuing to make the same mistakes over and over again. So there is the practical tip. On a personal level, the second thing I want to encourage you to do is Remember that comparison is the thief of joy. I know it's been said many times, but the fastest way to suck the fun right out of a competition or any endeavor is to compare yourself to others. The squad that I was on last weekend had a wide spectrum of shooters. I watched really high level shooters in awe and, wondering if I could ever go that fast or move that well and hoping someday I could. But my encouragement to you is to learn from everyone that you can. And you can learn a lot just through observing other people who are great at what they do. So stay curious and have an open mind. And always remember that through hard work, focus, and consistency, you will get to where you want to go. Just remember to be motivated. Also, this is really important. Be motivated by the joy of the process of shooting and not just the outcome every time. Otherwise, you're going to be chasing a never ending squirrel that you will never achieve and never be satisfied. And even if you achieve the thing that you think will make you happy, there will always be another thing, right? So try to enjoy the process. I think that's really important. And I think we miss that too sometimes. Um, and then, what Joe Blow speed shooter is doing might not be where you are right now. And that's okay. Just improve where you are today. Instead of feeling beat down and discouraged by better shooters through comparison, be inspired to become better. And then finally, my word of encouragement is that you need to remember that everybody starts somewhere, right? Everybody starts somewhere. Although I wasn't the best in the squad, I was also not the worst. And I bet in your life, you are not the worst at what you do either. There may be somebody, this is important. There may be somebody looking up to you right now because you're farther along in the journey than they are. So remember to be kind, always help people, and know that everyone starts somewhere. And remember where you started. Also, it's really important to remember, guys, no one is perfect. We are all out here. All of us are. So even if you have somebody that you really look up to that inspires you, that you want to be like, of course, yes, look up to them, be inspired, try to learn from them. But also remember, like, they're not perfect either. And we're all just doing the best we can. And the other thing this weekend that really was inspiring to me, I was so fortunate to be surrounded by helpful, kind people during the match who knew the rules really well. There were a lot of rules that I didn't know or had to be introduced to, and they helped me navigate the process of shooting competitively. I'm just so grateful for that because that made it so much more fun and inviting. So if you're discouraged today, think about how you can help someone else. Surely there's something that you're good at that someone else is not good at. And being of service to others is one of the best ways to take the focus off of yourself. And by doing so, you'll be blessed in ways that you don't even expect. Also, if you're not where you want to be, just know that the only thing that you have to do today is start. Remember, I said everyone starts somewhere. Start somewhere, start anywhere. If you fail, start again. The only true failure is not trying in the first place. So get out there and try, get uncomfortable, try something new, be of service to others, and do the best you can with the gifts that you've been given. You'll be surprised where it takes you. And I hope this is helpful to someone out there today. Someone within the listening to my voice now hopefully took something away from that that's helpful. All right, let's move on then. Oh, I was going to introduce you, Adam. The founder of Defenders USA is helping me behind the scenes. How are you, Mr. Adam?
Good to see you, Laura. Hey, for those of us who watch Defenders Live, right, we've become kind of fans not only of the show but also of Laura. So it's
Oh,
taken me a bit to talk Laura into filming and showing her shooting. So this last
oh,
shooting competition she was just talking about, if you go to our YouTube channel, Defenders USA, under the shorts, the last short we did was Laura in one of those stages. So you can go see what she did there. It's pretty cool.
yeah. Thanks, Adam, for bringing that up.
Embarrass her.
Yeah, it is embarrassing, guys. It's hard to put yourself out there. And also, remember when I said that I thought I was going Ricky Bobby? Man, I was not going Ricky Bobby at all. But I was doing the best I could, right? In the moment. And that's all you can do. So just keep improving that. And anyway, All right, we'll move on past that. I want to tell you too, Adam's behind the scenes. If you're not used to watching the show, sometimes he just pops on the screen. So while we're doing our interview with Jonathan, he may pop on the screen from time to time. He may have a comment or a question. No big deal. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. Okay, a few announcements before I bring Jonathan on. Defenders Live is now officially on almost every podcasting platform, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So be sure to subscribe there. And if you like what you hear, leave us a review. That would really help us out. And you can also make sure to not miss another episode of Defenders Live by going to defenders-live.com. And you can sign up for email notifications at the bottom of the homepage. I send an email out every week, so you won't miss an episode. And you can also join our private Facebook group as well. So don't be shy. If you have comments during the show, feel free to chime in. That is why we're live. So you guys can all chime in, and we are going to have a live Q&A at the end of the broadcast. So if you have questions that pop up, just put them in the comments whenever they come to mind, and we'll be gathering those at the end of the broadcast. I was just looking to see who all we've got. Adam's in Arizona. We've got Anne-Marie from Texas. Heather is here from Arizona. Dylan from Texas. Haven Defense Company. Brent and Marissa from Colorado. Nancy from Montana. Hey, Nancy. Is this Tina? I think I say Tina. I'm not sure. But hey, Tina, I'm glad you're watching. And Lynn and Kathy from Michigan are watching as well. So appreciate all of you guys for tuning in tonight. So let's get right into the interview with Jonathan. We've got a lot to learn. So Jonathan Heslep grew up in the mountains of Southwest Montana. He has worked in emergency services since the age of 18, volunteering at 3 different local departments since 2008. He is currently a captain EMT with the Montana City Volunteer Fire Department. He began his professional career with the Montana Department of Natural Resources and Conservation as a wildland firefighter in 2011, where he still works as the fire operations specialist overseeing the Helena Unit engine crews. Jonathan also serves on the Emmanuel Church Security Team and has provided medical classes to several churches in the area. When not busy with his various jobs, he and his young family like to spend time in the mountains, hiking, camping, backpacking, skiing, canoeing, and eating fajitas around the campfire. So let's welcome Mr. Jonathan onto the show. Hey, Jonathan. Oh, let me unmute you here. There you go. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so a little bit of backstory here. We should probably let people know. So Jonathan and I, we live, kind of in the same geographical location, but we have trained together through Adam's classes, pistol and rifle. So we know each other through that. And then Jonathan, let's see, it's been a few months ago, I think you hosted I had it written down what it was. It was a mass casualty. What was that class called? Do you remember?
It had a long title, mass casualty active murder scenario thing for church security.
Right.
Something like that. Yeah. A little more official sounding.
Yeah. And so you were the lead instructor for that. And you walked us through a bunch of scenarios. You started with a lot of foundational knowledge, which was helpful. And so I really got a lot out of that. And when I was thinking about who to bring on for medical, he was the first person that popped in my head. Somebody who I think knows a lot, has a lot of firsthand experience, has a heart of service, as I think the mission behind Defenders USA is all about. And I think that you've kind of been a part of that. You've taken a lot of classes with Defenders USA as well. So those were some of the reasons I wanted him on here. I kind of had to twist his arm a little bit, if I'm being honest. But he decided to come on. So let's start with, well, I am a little bit curious. I know that you don't have any great stories about, why you went into the field, but I do always find it fascinating. People that become first responders, what is it about that drew you to it?
Well, I was probably 9 or 10 years old, and my family would burn slash piles on our property, and we had one get away, and it was really fun. I loved it. fire department came up, and it was the greatest day in the world. And every time after that, when we burned piles, I would hope that we would lose them. We only did one other time, so that's okay. But we caught it way too quickly before the fire department came. And then my dad became a volunteer firefighter. He was volunteer in 2000, which we had a lot of fires in the Helena area. That year, my family was evacuated for a while. So he did that. I liked emergency response in general. Growing up, I wanted to be a sheriff's deputy. And when I turned 18, I joined the local volunteer fire department to get a better idea of what emergency response is and meet some deputies and kind of work my way in through there. When I was fighting fire, I got to see law enforcement closer up and realized that really didn't look like a fun job. And firefighting was a fun job. I remember the first arson fire I was at. I was having fun fighting the fire, and the law enforcement were not having as much fun trying to convince the dad that, yes, his kids actually did start the fire. And I was like, well, that doesn't look as fun as what I'm doing. So, went to college and got an associate's degree in fire rescue at the Helena College.
You didn't put that in your bio. That's okay.
No, got a job with the DNRC in 2011, and just stayed in fire ever since, and I love it.
Well, that's great. I'm so glad that you're a part of that, and I think we have a lot we can learn from you. So let's get right into it. You talk a lot about mindset. You did that when we were in the class too. And so I'm curious to know why mindset is so important when it comes to emergencies, and what should people think about in order to face a medical emergency?
Mm-hmm. People behave strangely and erratically in emergencies. I remember when I started volunteering, as a volunteer fire department, we weren't staffing the station. We were just at home or at work or wherever we happened to be. And when the call came in, we'd go to the station, get an engine, and respond. And I remember I was not cool, calm, and collected. I was running back and forth, ran out to the vehicle, realized I forgot my shoes, ran back in, got my shoes, ran out to the vehicle, realized I forgot my keys, ran back in, got my keys. I think there were 3 or 4 times that I actually ran to my vehicle before I was able to drive away. And I've seen, not usually to that extent, but I've seen that with a lot of firefighters on their first couple of calls, that they get very excited, just a big adrenaline dump. I've seen a lot of the people in those emergencies. They can behave very differently, very erratically. People can, they lose their reason. And when they're thrown into a situation that is not their normal, and they get knocked off kilter and they don't know what to do, they can, they're really more of a detriment than an assistant to the situation.
Especially if it's their loved one, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So do you have any tips then as to how we could handle that maybe a little bit better? We talk about this in firearms training too. We talk about, running scenarios and inoculating ourselves to stress. So is it similar in the medical field as well?
Yes, definitely. The more time you spend in it, the more used to it you get. And that's the same with everything. So this really isn't anything special. The more you do something, the better you are at it. The more you're in a stressful situation, the better you handle stress. The more you practice stress relieving techniques, the better you handle stress. There are a lot of techniques like that everyone knows. Get enough sleep, drink enough water.
Does everyone know?
Drink alcohol. Okay, maybe not everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone should know. Drinking alcohol does not help stress. It feels like it does at the moment, but it prolongs it longer. Getting enough sleep, getting enough exercises, being healthy, all that stuff that most people do know as a standard but don't actually practice increases the stress, and it increases the long-term effect of the stress to where that can come back and get you later, years down the road even, unless you are very careful and regimented and stay on taking care of yourself and having a good work-life balance. That's kind of, a lot of people talk about work-life balance. Very few people actually live that. And it's not just time of you spend 50% of your time at work, 50% of your time with your family. I look at it more as intent of time and focus,
Hmm.
and rather than actual counting the minutes.
Yeah. But what about when you're in the moment, you have that adrenaline dump and you are feeling yourself start to lose control a little bit? Do you have any tips on that?
Yeah. So who are you with? Who? So on a fire crew, we have people on our crew. Um, when you have a good, strong, solid crew, or friends, family, whoever you're there with, if they are calmness breeds other calmness, whereas
Mm.
hysteria breeds more hysteria.
Hmm.
So we don't want to be, um, and I apologize because I'm not really saying anything new here. I'm like, this is
It might be
all
new
the
to
life that
somebody.
comes
Yeah.
together. You surround yourself with people that you want to emulate. If you're going shooting, you want to shoot with people who are better than you. If you're training at medical, you want to train with people who are better than you. If you want to live through a tough situation, you need to do that with people who are better than you. And when other people are calm, it breeds calmness.
Mm.
When you're calm, it breeds calmness in yourself and in others. I think the voice is the biggest betrayer of whether or not you're calm or freaking out. Like
What
they
do you
say, like
mean?
a duck in the water. I don't know if you're familiar with the analogy, but a duck sitting in the water floating around, it looks very calm. But underneath the surface, they're paddling like crazy. But you can't see that. So
Hmm.
acting like a duck in the water. You may be freaking out on the inside, but if you're calm on the outside, you slow down. Don't just speak. Stop, think, speak calmly, clearly, with a quiet voice rather than a loud voice. That will calm yourself down. That will calm other people down. Um,
Hmm.
it just really overall helps the situation.
See, you think these are all things people know, but it's because it's automatic to you. You just know these things. So, yeah, not everybody knows these things. Okay. Is there anything else about stress management that you wanted to say before we move on?
It comes with time. Don't expect it to just be something that you work on and you get. The longer you are putting yourself into those situations, just like with strength training, you want to be strong. You don't just go to the gym and you're now strong. You work
Yeah, takes
out for
practice.
years and you put in the time.
Hmm.
And don't be surprised that you don't see the effects
So
until
we could practice it whenever in our everyday life then, right? We get a chance to practice being calm every day. There's things that
yes,
happen. Maybe it's not a medical emergency, but maybe there are other things that happen in our life that get our heart rate up, that get us wound up, and we can practice in those situations, right?
yeah, don't
Yeah.
say no to things that are hard. Um, right now, I'm trying to be calm. This is not normal for me.
You
So
out of your comfort
to
zone
me,
right
this
now,
is a stressful
Jonathan?
environment, and this is something that I'm working on, and I'm trying to uh, maintain my calm and work through this and get better for the next time.
So you're literally practicing what you preach right now. Is that what you're saying?
That's right.
I love it. See, I knew he was the right guy for the job. That's awesome. Okay, so all right, let's move past stress management then and go into training. We want to know what type of training should we be getting, and then we can move on from there because that's really important.
Mhm. So the kind of training you need
Just
is
the
very
everyday
different.
civilian, right? We're not talking
Yeah.
about an EMT.
So what is the everyday civilian? Where the the group listening to this is from all over the place,
Mm-hmm.
all different places of the country, different communities, city, country. Um, so what do they need is very hard because there's no one size fits all.
Okay.
So there's a guy, Gordon Graham. Um, Adam, you may know of him. He's I forget where he's from, but he's a cop from, I want to say, the Southwest somewhere. But he gave a talk that you can find on YouTube. If you're not familiar with it, after this show, go on YouTube and search Gordon Graham, high risk, low frequency. He
Oh
talks about high risk,
yeah.
low frequency events. And that's different everywhere. So whatever your job is, whatever where you live is, what is the risk to you and your community, and how well are you ready for that? The worse the risk and the lower the frequency, Those are the bad events. If something's high risk, driving is high risk, but it's high frequency. We do that all the time. And a lot of people should be training at it, but most people don't train at that. They get by with doing it, do it all the time. We're good at it for the most part. Sort of. I know a lot of people who aren't good at it, but we'll let that slide for now. Other things like that we don't do all the time. So I don't ride a dirt bike. That would be lower frequency for me. Just as high risk, but lower frequency. So that is a more dangerous thing. So that, if I'm going to be around that, that is something that I have to train for. Okay. So putting that into medical, what is the risk that you're facing? Are you going backpacking a lot in the backcountry? Backcountry medicine is way different than city medicine. You have different tools, you have different time frames you have to work with, different ways to communicate, a lot of different things you have to learn in order to practice that type of medicine. So I can't really give a clear answer, but rather put this back on the listener and look at where am I and what is my risk? If I live on a fault line, what is the risk of a bad earthquake? Or what is the risk of bad wildfire in this area? What is the risk of gang shootings in this area? Mm-hmm. And what are the emergencies that come out of that?
Okay.
I would treat someone differently who was shot in a drive-by gang shooting than I would someone who had a beam fall over on top of them from a wildfire burning the house or other natural disasters like that, tornadoes, hurricanes. You get different injuries and you get different, therefore have to treat them differently.
Yeah. That's a good point. I never really thought of that before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So looking at what is your high risk, low frequency, Gordon Graham also goes into what do we have time for? He calls them non-discretionary time. If something is going bad now, say an active shooter event, we have no time to plan for that. If something is going to go bad in a couple of days, like a hurricane is coming in, we have time to plan for that. So breaking down those high risk, low frequency events into what do we actually have time to plan for? The ones that we have time to plan for aren't as big of a deal because I can go on YouTube and look out how to do things for a hurricane if I know one's coming in a couple of days. I can't go on YouTube and search what to do in an active shooter situation when there's an active shooter.
Right.
So in your area, what is your risk? What are you not good at? What is the low frequency? And what do you not have time in the moment to prepare for? And that is what I would pinpoint to be your top priority for training. And I think a lot of the people in this group who listen to this know this because this is, for the most part, sort of a gun training sort of group. Mm-hmm. And using your gun is definitely high risk, low frequency, no discretionary time. But medical situations, particularly trauma, are just as high risk, low frequency, or they're not as low frequency. It happens way more, but to us personally, it's not a common occurrence. Mm-hmm. So as you said in the beginning, and I believe you were quoting Adam, we have way more chance of facing medical or trauma problems than gun problems. Mm-hmm. And so that should be the primary point of our training. If our goal is legitimately to save life, that is where we would put our training. But we often focus on what's cool because guns are way cooler than tourniquets. And I would much rather practice with my gun than with my tourniquet. And I practice more with my gun than I do with my tourniquet. The tourniquet, just using that as an example for medical equipment, is it's a more prevalent life-saving tool, and our goal is to save innocent life.
Hi, Adam.
Hey, so Jonathan, so you hit something pretty important there, right? Top 10 years, and I used far more medical gear than I ever did bullets in the line of duty. So how often, right, you as an EMT and all, how often do you see where, say, the Joe Jane civilian right? They're able to do something to help themselves until you get there. Have you run into that before? Because I'm sure you've seen a lot, but how often do you think that happens?
Very rarely. If they
Hmm.
do intervene, they intervene the bare minimum, and they would rather just stand there and look rather than even just get down on a knee on level with the hurt or injured or sick person and see what to do. People are really afraid to help.
Hmm.
And if they help, they do the bare minimum, and then they stop and they wait for someone else to do something because no one wants to be the first person to act. Once one person acts, usually other people join in.
So do you think it's fear of legalities, or do you think that people just naturally go, I don't want to be the first one to do it, or it's yucky, it's bloody, I don't want
They
to
don't
touch
know
it?
what to do, maybe.
Yeah.
I would say a combination of all of them. From a lot of classes I've taught, legalities are every time they come up, people are wondering, what can I legally do? And
That's sad.
Yeah, you're putting legals over morals.
Yeah.
And that is not a good place to be.
Okay, so here's another question. How often do you see when, say, somebody has like an IFAC of some type, or they have some type of medical gear and maybe a little bit of training, that they're able to really help themselves? Say nobody else will do it. Is that something you run across? Because, I mean, we have a lot of people who, I mean, in our community, we tend to carry IFACs around. We tend to have them in our cars, our house, or whatever else. And, I mean, I've had to apply self-aid to myself, and I figure most of us within this community will probably have some access to something. At least I hope so. And if you don't, you better go get yourself an IFAC, right? So how often, Jonathan, do you see where trained people with medical gear tend to help themselves if nobody else can or is willing to?
So I was a Boy Scout back when Boy Scouts were better than what they are today. So I want to give that little disclaimer there. In Boy Scouts, I saw it a lot. Boy Scouts are trained. It varies from troop to troop and region to region how well they're trained. I am biased, and my troop was the best. So I would say I had seen several growing up where most of my friends were in the troop with me, and most of everything we did was either my friends' family or friends from Boy Scouts who were all really the same, and most of us were Boy Scouts together. So we would go out and do things, and I would see people helping out a lot. Once I got out on my own, doing things with other people, I didn't really see it ever. I have seen a couple of occasions where I was backpacking in the Cabinet Wilderness, and there was a off-duty game warden. He helped, but he didn't have any equipment. There was a EMT. He was helping, but he didn't have any equipment.
Wow.
And when I showed up, I was the only one who had equipment.
But this stuff is more essential, or as essential as your gun. I mean, you carry this stuff with you.
Yeah.
Okay, especially when you're hiking. So as an EMT, you roll up on the scene. You see people applying their own tourniquets, their own bandages. Do you see that stuff?
No, I've never seen that.
Wow.
Really? That's a sad testament. Okay, I want to jump back out, but man, I think we need to be well trained in not only helping other people, but applying it to ourselves, right? I mean, shucks, I would like to think that I can get a tourniquet on and bandage stuff up if I can even move before EMTs could get there, right? Why wait for them to get there if we can help it? So, all right, I'll get back out. That's my soapbox.
Thanks, Adam.
Yep.
So then, okay, let's just give people a basic idea of some training that they can get that just generally is a good idea. Like for especially the firearms world, I think Stop the Bleed is a must-have. CPR training is very helpful. Is there anything else that you would encourage people to do?
Yeah, at a bare minimum, I would say Stop the Bleed and CPR. Those are the two things that you can do that will save a life right now and make an absolute difference.
And so is that something they should revisit every year? Should they, like, what is the minimum, and should we exceed that?
People who aren't in it often and basically they just take the class, I would say they should do it every year or every 2 years. Every year to every 2 years. I understand that years go by quickly and it can be hard to prioritize.
The older you get, the faster they go.
Yes, they are. And so I would say minimum 2 years.
Okay.
Take a medical class. at the very minimum, and that is scraping the bottom of minimum.
So let's say then that someone has decided they're going to take a stop the bleed, they're going to take a CPR, and they want to carry some medical with them, and they're not sure what they might need. Are there any just basic essentials that you could tell people to get?
Yes, an IFAC is awesome. That will save a life.
Tell people what that is in case they don't know.
An IFAC is an individual first aid kit. There are a lot of different kinds. Defenders USA sells them, as was shown earlier. I actually really like theirs. A lot of IFACs, or pretty much all first aid kits that I've seen, with very few exceptions, have a lot of stuff that I don't like. And the Defenders USA ones, and I'm not getting paid to say this, are the only ones that I've seen that I actually liked every single thing in it.
Okay.
So those ones are great.
Okay.
They are also missing some things because their purpose is an IFAC. And an IFAC is primarily stopping massive hemorrhaging. So the person's about to bleed to death in a couple minutes. And that is the purpose, and they are great at that, and that definitely will save a life. There are other things like CPR masks, that sort of thing, that are really good to have. CPR statistically is not done because people are afraid of touching and it's gross and they don't want to kiss a stranger and breathe inside of them. And I understand, I don't want to do that either. But you can carry masks to do that. Also, you don't even have to breathe. You just have to keep the blood flowing because that person is comatose, basically
just
dead.
do the compressions.
And they don't need a lot of air. They're not running. They're not using a lot of oxygen. They just need the blood that already is oxygenated to flow through. And just doing compressions, hands only CPR for 10 minutes, that'll keep someone alive-ish until paramedics arrive and can administer oxygen. So
Alive-ish, I like that.
Basically, if you're doing CPR, it's because there's no pulse, and that's kind of the way you just like check if someone's dead, which is another point I make at my CPR classes I teach. A lot of people are afraid of messing up. If you're doing CPR, it's because there's no pulse. If there's no pulse, isn't that how you see if someone's dead? So if they're dead, how can you mess up? How can you kill a dead person? You can only make it better by intervening. You can't mess up. So there should be no reason to be afraid, no reason to act, because all you can do is make it better, and it's impossible to make it worse unless you pull out a knife or a gun, which no one's going to do.
What were you going to say, Adam?
Hey, so I jumped in. You guys were talking IFAC. So
I have mine too. Look.
Right here. We have more IFACs, right? Another small one. Here's another IFAC that I carry around. Here's another one. Guys, they're small. They're easy. Get yourself some IFACs. In fact, I tend to carry one per every member of my family. So if we go somewhere, I've got, all four of us in the car. There's four there with me. So we have extra one at the house. My wife carries one in her car. So get yourself one of these things. These are life-saving tools. I tell you, just as, if not more important than your gun.
So there are a ton of different IFACs. I have this one here. This one's smaller. This one's by Dark Angel Medical. I'm kind of changing topics. I hope you don't mind.
I'd go. Just,
This is a problem that I see a lot.
Okay.
This.
Oh, yeah.
Open the IFAC. This is it. Now, the problem is I need to keep this shrink wrapped because it will stay ready a lot longer. Otherwise, you can see the outside of this. This goes on a Wildland fire pack. In Wildland, there's a lot of dirt, dust that messes up equipment really quickly. Keeping it in its shrink wrap container will make it last way longer. But if I have this, I don't know what's in it. I haven't practiced with it. I've never actually opened this up. And this thing was, I want to say it was $250 or something like that. And I'm not going to open this up and play with it and waste $250 and now I have to go buy another one. So that's a problem I see a ton, that people get stuff, but then they don't know what's in it and they don't practice with it because it's expensive. So,
and didn't you say that staging your tourniquets is really important too?
Yep. So this one has a tournament here. Again, it's shrink wrapped because it'll last 10 times as long if it's not exposed to the wildland fire environment. But this will slow me down if I need to use it. So I see a lot of times people, even that have first aid kits, have never opened it up, don't know what's in it, don't know where things are in it, and can't actually grab things in the moment. Because in the moment of saving someone's life, you're not thinking slowly, clearly. You're not acting decisively. You're freaking out. And it's really hard to act rationally, slow, and thoughtfully in that situation. So you almost have to buy 2 first aid kits, one for training and one for carrying for real life scenarios. And then that doubles the price. And that's hard for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But it comes back to the priority. Laura, or maybe Adam, like what would you say is the average amount of money that people have put into their setup when you teach a pistol class?
Oh, it depends, but sometimes it can be a lot. More than a tourniquet or more than a IFAC cost, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you really see people very often that have spent less than $500 total? I mean, the gun,
Not usually.
holster,
Yeah, not usually.
extra magazines, ammo, cost of the class.
Right.
It adds up.
Yeah.
How often do you find, and that's to use a gun, which is high risk, low frequency, and yet they're not willing to buy, and this is an expensive example for this small, $250-ish. They're not willing to buy one for real life and one for training.
Yeah,
for
I get your
less than
point.
that,
Yeah.
for just as great risk and more likely to need.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
So it's the priority of how
Could
willing am I to save a life, because guns are cooler. I would rather spend $1,000 on a gun than $1,000 on medical equipment.
But I see the need, and I think that investing in that is really important. And again, it's one of those things that if you need it and don't have it, it's not a good day. I wanted to go back to something that I asked you before, but I didn't get the answer, so I'm going to ask again. And that is some of just the basic general things. So a tourniquet is a good idea. I know Adam's a fan of the soft T tourniquets. I think that's what they're called. There's also the cat tourniquets. Having chest seals is helpful. Having quick clot, gauze, medical shears is important. Probably gloves. What else are some like high level things that are just good basics to have?
Hemostatic dressing, so gauze that has a quick clot in it. There's Quick Clot is a brand, and there's combat gauze. There's a couple different kinds, but a gauze that has something that helps coagulate the blood quickly. If you are using just gauze to pack a wound, and I don't remember exactly, it's been a while, but I want to say it's something like 15 minutes before the blood coagulates and they stop bleeding out. That's 15 minutes that you have to sit there holding pressure on that wound, and that's a long time. If you use a hemostatic dressing, it's more like 3 to 5 minutes. That is a very big difference. And if you're thinking a mass casualty situation where there's a lot of people to get to, 15 minutes per patient versus 3 to 5 minutes per patient per life saved, people are going to bleed out and die. So some kind of hemostatic dressing is very important. There are other compression dressings. So this is an Israeli bandage. I think there's a couple different terms for this. Most people call them Israeli bandages. Again, I don't know how many people that even have these that have opened them. How does this work? This is it. There's a weird dude out here. How does that work? Very few know. So, side note, learn your equipment, open it up, learn how to use it, because when someone's dying, you don't want to open this up and think, how do I use that?
Right.
So bulky dressings to help stop the bleeding. I'm a big fan of tape. I think you can never have too much tape within reason, obviously.
I think Adam put duct tape in the Defenders USA IFAC.
Yep.
Yeah, he did.
I don't know, but duct tape is excellent tape. There's frog tape, which is really good. It's more expensive and you can't get a big roll of it as readily, but that sticks really well. Just normal medical tape. There's 1,000 different kinds of medical tape that some are more like rubber, some are more like fabric or gauze. Just having a lot of tape. I've never thought on this scene, I wish I didn't have all this tape, because you roll of tape for something and you set it down, and then you do something else, and then you grab your other roll of tape out of your first aid kit, use that, and then you set it down, and then, oh, where's my roll of tape? Oh, there it is in my first aid kit. You end up using them all.
Okay, that's good to know.
Uh,
And then anything else?
There are, so this is an IT clamp. It looks a little bit like a hair beret.
Oh, yeah, I remember those. Okay.
Or a Venus flytrap. It's got spikes on there.
Mm-hmm.
Massive hemorrhage in the neck or head is really hard to control. You can't use a tourniquet. If it's on the neck, you can't really pack that hole up with gauze because important stuff needs to flow through there. So it's really hard to stop. These are excellent for head and neck injuries. You just open it up, slap it right on the skin, and then you close it together, and it just squishes the skin together, basically sutures it together, and it keeps blood from coming out. If you have a really long cut, and I'm just using my arm as an example, but on the arm, I'd probably more likely use a tourniquet. You could, if you had multiple, you could just stack them along the long cut. So these work really well for keeping the blood in the body. And if they stay in the body, unless it's a large, like the chest, abdomen cavity where you can lose all of your blood just in there. But if it's on the neck, head, something like that, there's not a lot of places for the blood to go. The blood will coagulate within about 15 minutes or less, and then it'll stop bleeding.
Okay, that's good to know. So, hey guys, we're getting to the end of the show already. I feel like we just got started. So if you have questions for Jonathan, put those in the comments and we'll get to those here in a little bit. So let's see. I guess it would be important, even though I told everybody where to go to get a medical kit. I told them to go to Mountain Man Medical, and there's a link in the description. But where else could people go? Or are there places they shouldn't go to get medical supplies? I'm pretty sure I know the answer to that one. Any tips in that department?
I'm more concerned about where not to go because there are a lot of good places.
Okay.
Don't search the internet for the cheapest thing you can find. You don't do that for your gun, so don't do it for your other life-saving equipment. There are a lot of knockoff versions of the cat tourniquet, for example, and they can be completely indistinguishable from the real. So if I go on Amazon and buy a cat tourniquet, I don't know if it's real or not. And there's people like Adam who have seen cat tourniquets fail, and he doesn't trust them. And I don't know if that's the reason, but my assumption is it was probably the knockoffs that were failing. And nobody knows the difference because you can't tell because they're really good at making money off of a good piece of equipment and making people die from it. So don't go to cheap places. Go to legit sites. Mountain Man Medical. I like High Threat Innovations, MyMedic, North American Rescue, Dark Angel Medical. There's a lot of good ones. Not eBay. And if you're going on Amazon, at the very least, make sure that you are not buying the cheapest and you are going to that vendor's store on Amazon.
Okay. Is there a difference, or do you have a recommendation on whether we should buy a kit that's already put together or make one ourselves? What are your thoughts on that?
If you're going to a good company and you buy something that's already put together, it will be good. It might not be personalized to you, but you'll know it's good. You're going to be paying more for someone else to do the work for you. But if you don't know what to do, you're paying that money to make a professional decision for you. So for those just getting into it, I would say get something pre-made unless you know someone that can help you make your own. Once you know what you're doing, I'd say just make your own because you can personalize it. You can get the exact bag that you want to put it in, how you're planning on carrying it, and get your preferred equipment. If you like the SAM or the CAT or the soft T or whatever it is, you buy the one that you like.
Okay. All right. So anything else that I missed here? You kind of talked about the legal a little bit. Is there anything that we need to be aware of or concerned about as far as that goes, as far as helping someone out? Is there ever a time where we shouldn't help someone?
You shouldn't if it poses a threat to do so. So I'll use the obvious example. If there is an active shooter and they're still shooting, but they have an injury, don't go help them. If the people around them are getting killed, you don't help them at that point. There's a saying, hurdle the wounded, or hurdle the dead to save the dying, or something like that. I just butchered that. I'm sure Adam can correct me. But we start with the scene safety. Make sure it's safe. I don't help anyone if I go in and die while trying to help.
Mm-hmm.
So mitigate that threat. Even if you die mitigating the threat, you need to start by mitigating the threat. And if that's where you start and you die doing that, that's okay. But you need to stop what's causing the problem. Once that's stopped, help people. A lot of people are concerned about legalities and getting sued. And this is I'm not a lawyer, obviously, and I don't know all the laws, but essentially the condensed down version is if you are not a licensed medical professional, and I'm not talking about a certified something, I'm talking about having a license to practice. So if you have a CPR certification, that doesn't count. If you have an EMT license, you're restricted by that license. If you are not licensed, you are restricted by basically whatever you can convince a jury seemed like a good idea at the time with the information you had. So you, Laura, can do more life-saving interventions than I can.
Wow.
Because you're not licensed. If you, and this would be hard to do, but if you could make a case that open heart surgery seemed like a good idea at the time with the information you had, you could probably get off scot-free. If I started an IV because I don't have that endorsement, I would lose my license.
Wow.
So if you don't know what you're doing, you can do whatever you want. Have at it. But so that's Good Samaritan laws, which is a good thing because it does free people to help. And people, if they help, very rarely actually cause harm. And so so many more lives are saved by people being freed to help. So there's also just the moral aspect of if I can save a life, but I'm scared of being sued, I love my money more than I love the image of God. And that is not a good person to be, and not a good person to be around. So if you prioritize that over someone's life, I would rather not hang out with you unless I'm convincing you otherwise. And then once you're convinced, then I'll hang out with you. Otherwise, you're just going to let me die, and I don't want to die yet.
Yeah.
So it just depends on what do you love? Do you love your money, or do you love God's image?
That's a good way to end the show. It's like perfect. Did I miss anything? Are there any final thoughts you want to leave people with before we?
I don't believe so.
We do have a question here. Okay. If you want to answer a question, Karen wants to know: is there a way we can get an actual good list? I missed a couple of items.
Yeah, I believe you had my email address on there. So.
Oh yeah, could you pull that up, Adam?
People can feel free to email me if they have equipment questions, training questions, anything follow up. But if your church wants some training in the Helena area, get a hold of me. I love to help people save lives.
So I think part of the list that we had was tourniquet, tape, can't have enough tape, trauma shears, chest seals, quick clot, gauze. What were the other basics? There's like a couple others.
I'm going brain dead.
That's all right.
In order to answer the question fully, I would have to know more about the individual,
okay,
who they're around, what they're doing. Are you into mountain biking, or
okay,
or are you just hanging out at home, or is this for a vehicle? There's a lot more questions to narrow down exactly what should be in a kit.
Okay. All right, that's fair.
A lot of kits, and every kit is very different for different purposes.
Okay. You should put a PDF together. That would be awesome. For various, that would be a lot of work too. But anyway, an idea. Okay, here's another question. I don't know who's asking it, but they want to know, can you talk about implied consent in the context of refusal of assistance?
Yes. So If I came upon a conscious, competent adult and they did not want help, I can't help them. If they let me know that they don't want help, I can't help them. I can't take them to a hospital. That would be kidnapping. Can't do it. If they can't communicate and or if the situation changes, I can help, and that's implied consent. So Laura, if you were lying on the road, breathing, injured, and you said, "Don't help me, I don't trust you, don't help me," and then you pass out, now the situation changed and you are no longer able to tell me that you didn't want help. So I can assume that now that it's changed, you would want help. If you knew that you were passed out, you would want help. So now I can assist you.
Okay. That's a good question. Whoever asked that, that's really good.
Kids don't have the same rights of adults. They can't turn down help. And there are a lot of intricacies in different states and everything, so don't take my word as the final say. But a parent or guardian can deny care for a kid, but the kid can't deny the care. So we have a duty, obligation to help kids who are dying, even if they don't want it, unless their parent or guardian doesn't want it. And then in that case, we would involve law enforcement, and law enforcement would say, actually, they're getting help.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions. Any parting thoughts for our audience? Did we miss anything? Did you hear me?
Sorry, what was that from the audience?
He's not even listening to me anymore. Can you believe it? I think his hour is done.
I thought you asked for something from the audience. I didn't.
Oh, no. Hi, Adam.
I don't believe so.
Hey, so I wanted to jump in here. You were talking earlier about, if something bad is happening, hurdle the dead to go save the injured, right? We have a saying in my world that is, I think, is kind of pertinent to here is stop the killing, then stop the dying, right? Mm-hmm. So the hard part of this is that people with good moral compasses, we tend to, when we see somebody hurt, even when things are very active, we plaintively want to go to that injured person. Where if something still is active going on, it's in your church, your movie theater, it's an active killer of some type or a terrible event that's ongoing, you've got to if you're the one that's going to defend, you've got to let those people scream. Or scream bloody murder, bleed, whatever you've got to do, you've got to be able to ignore them on an emotional level to go stop the killing, right? To go address the evil that's there. Only then do you take the time. And that's going to be hard. Think of it this way. You're walking down the road with your family. Something terrible happens. One of your own kids or your family member gets hurt terribly. You can't pause to take care of that when evil is still in your face. You've got to take care of evil first before you get back to them. So that was kind of the saying we had, was stop the killing, then stop the dying.
Mm-hmm. And I guess Laura did have a final thought for getting training. Training for civilians is really hard to come by and really expensive and few and far between, and you have to travel for it, which is really unfortunate. But training for volunteer firefighters is really easy to get, and a lot of volunteer departments will actually pay for your class dues to go become an EMT and all that sort of thing. Most people live in an area that has a volunteer fire department, or at least within response range of a volunteer fire department. If you want to experience emergency situations, get that stress inoculation that we were talking about earlier going into those situations, become a volunteer firefighter. You're helping your community, you're serving, you're doing good work, you are getting good training that you're not even having to pay for. And it's just really no downside other than it takes up your time. But it's very rewarding. And that is a great loophole for civilians to go get classes. There are a lot of classes out there that are not open to the general public, unfortunately, but are open to volunteer firefighters. And we are the general public. So that's how we can get into it. And that's how we can maintain practice, maintain training. And we're not just doing that every 2-year CPR class. We're doing it more often, and we don't have to pay for it. And the training often comes to our location.
I never thought of that. Awesome. Well, thank you, Jonathan, for your time. You made it through the whole hour. You stayed calm, and you must have practiced all the stress management that you talked to us about. Really glad that you took the time to do it. I know that you were a little bit hesitant, but I knew you were the guy for the job. So I appreciate you showing up and being uncomfortable for us.
Thanks, Laura.
All right, go ahead and stay in the green room for me because I'll be done here in a little bit, and then we can talk.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So, what did you guys think of Jonathan Heslep and all of the information that he brought us tonight? I feel like we could have probably gone even more into the weeds with things, but that's a good place to start for most people. And I hope that you learned something, got some kind of good information from that. I want to give a shout out to all of my local supporters, all of you that have supported Defenders Live through the community on locals.com. I want to thank you guys for continuing that support. It helps so much. For those of you that don't know, the locals community is where I post exclusive Defenders Live content that you won't see anywhere else. And there's a lot going on in the world right now. I'll be posting another one of those pretty soon. And also you'll have access to some early special Defenders Lives, early access to those. Brian Hill's story was one of them that we posted early on the Locals channel. And it's where I host Defenders Uncensored. Defenders Uncensored is a series of roundtable discussions where we talk candidly about issues that might seem controversial, but we don't think they should be. And they're on Locals because we won't get kicked off of that platform by talking about those issues. So come join the Defenders Live community at locals.com, and you can search Defenders Live in the Discover tab at locals.com to find that community. Next week, we have a really awesome guest. I'm super excited to announce Whitney Lindsay is going to be on next Wednesday. Whitney served in the U.S. Army as a helicopter pilot and has spent 4 years with the U.S. Forest Service as a wildland firefighter. And she is the director of operations at Heligunner, where they specialize in aerial gunnery, military simulation, special events, corporate team buildings, tactical training, hog hunting, and disaster response. So there's going to be a lot to go over next week. It's going to be a really good episode. Looking forward to that. And so that's what to expect for next week. 7 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time every Wednesday is where you can find Defenders Live. We'll see you next Wednesday. Until then, take care.